Good evening, everyone, whoever you are, musicians, pianists, songwriters, teachers, and music lovers.
We're singers with Cherilyn Bacon from Singers on Stage, and we're thrilled to welcome you to Kulak's Woodshed. We're so happy you're here for a special night with the legendary Mike Garson.
A quick housekeeping, just note, reminder, the restrooms back that way, red door. Also, reminder, we can take photos, no flash and no video, please. Don't forget to silence your phones. Kulak's is a unique spot in North Hollywood, but we don't allow drinks nor food, but created as a dedicated venue to supporting aspiring musical artists, and we wish to thank the owner, Paul Kulak, for hosting this wonderful event this evening. You can follow all the artists who perform here on Instagram at Kulak's Woodshed, and learn more about Singers on Stage on the flyer you were given.
The flyer has the date for our concert, which is next week here, and we hope that you guys can come watch us.
So let's get started with the wonderful Cherilyn Bacon.
It is my honor and pleasure to introduce tonight Mike Garson, who is a pianist, composer, teacher, whose career spans over 7 decades, moving effortlessly between rock, jazz, classical, and the avant-garde. He has taught more than 10,000 private lessons, and he is still going strong. He has performed and recorded with rock legends like Smashing Pumpkins, Nine Inch Nails, Duran Duran, and most recently appeared on a track with Brandi Carlile. In the jazz world, he has played alongside greats such as Elvin Jones, Freddie Hubbard, Stanley Clarke, Lee Konitz, and Chick Corea, who produced his first album. You may know him best from his long association with David Bowie, more than 20 albums together and over 400 concerts. Here's how Bowie himself described meeting Mike. He said, "Mike has been working with me on and off since 1972. I was looking for a pianist to flesh out the Spiders from Mars stage sound, as there were a number of songs we wanted to do that required keyboard, and as Mike Ronson, my lead guitarist, and myself didn't feel that we could cut it on things like Life on Mars, we gave him a super fast audition at a recording studio in New York. Within 10 or 20 notes, we knew he was the guy." He was quite astounding. Because of his varied background, I will often throw a composer's name at him mid-recording, and he'll pick up on it, and immediately he will respond with something that touches that area. He is so fast to respond that way. It is pointless to talk about his ability as a pianist. He is exceptional. However, there are very, very few musicians, let alone pianists, who naturally understand, my students will vouch that when they do something extraordinary, I get emotional, and this one is one of those moments, Mike. There are very, very few musicians, let alone pianists, who naturally understand the movement and free thinking necessary to hurl themselves into experimental and traditional areas of music, sometimes, ironically, at the same time. Mike does this with such enthusiasm that it makes my heart glad just to be in the same room with him. And I know we all feel the same tonight. Tonight's masterclass will be simple and direct. Sometimes Mike will play the piano when he feels the moment calls for it. Most of the time, he'll be taking questions directly from each of you, the audience, and do his best to answer everyone within our 90-minute format. And so, please join me in welcoming the phenomenal Mike Garson.
It's great to be with you. Thank you for coming out. And I like this setting better than when I'm at the Hollywood Bowl in Madison Square Garden because I can see you. And those spaces are more like events, and they are great. But I've always enjoyed playing in jazz clubs, and doing master classes actually is one of my greatest joy. And I did them before joining David Bowie, and I still do them and did them even when I was playing with David Bowie. So teaching for me and mentoring is sort of my real love. When I play, it's the same idea, it's just done through sound, you know. So I have nothing planned because I'm an improvising musician and also an improvising teacher. So we're going to start with some questions before I even play. I'm not feeling any music yet because I played in the rehearsal, so it's all gone and it went into the ethers, but it'll come back. So my son-in-law Mark will walk around with a microphone and hopefully understand. Just go for it, Mark. Who we have? Oh, gee, I have two already.
Come on.
Not
Come
from
on
here.
over here.
Oh, okay.
They got cameras. They want to see your face better
Okay.
than mine.
Nice to see you tonight. Of course, I followed Bowie his whole career, and he's changed like a chameleon over the years. What was one of your favorite tours that you were on with him, or album?
My favorite album was Aladdin Sane, and my favorite tour was in the mid-'90s, was called the Outside Tour. It was the least successful of every tour, and his manager used to come to me and say, can't you get him to do the hits? Because he was doing all this obscure avant-garde music. We had an amazing band with Gail Ann Dorsey on bass and vocals, Zach Alford on drums, and Reeves Gabrels, and David gave us so much freedom. I played with 13 different bands over, a 40-year span with David, and everyone was great. But this one just allowed so much freedom. The last tour, which was his final tour between 2003 and 2004, we were on the road 13 months prior to him getting sick. That was a fantastic band, and we did all the hits and some of the songs from that album called Reality. But it was more like karaoke with the real people playing his music exactly how it was done on Ziggy and Diamond Dogs and Young Americans. It was fantastic. But this Outside tour, you didn't know what was going to happen. David loved the saxophone. He had this big baritone saxophone, which is the biggest saxophone. And we would do a gig. He'd play it on a few songs. Then he'd invite us to a rave in London. And they wouldn't know it was us. We would just be in this little shed, and there'd be all these people on ecstasy or whatever they used in those days. And we're in the dark, and we're just improvising for 2 hours, no singing. So he was the real deal. That's what we shared. We shared the love of creating in the moment, and we also shared the chameleon world. I'm actually worse than him. It's just that he was a public figure, so it really seemed like he was changing every few months or every year or two. Just when the Ziggy Stardust was getting started, it was over, and he could have milked that for years. Well, every few days I'm changing, but fortunately I wasn't in the limelight, so I could do it. No one gives a shit, and that's fine with me too. Does that help?
Thank you so much.
Sure. Right here. Hello.
Thank you. Hi, I love that you mentioned Outside because it's probably one of my favorite albums.
Really?
Yes, and Small Plot of Land is one of my favorite
oh my God,
songs.
I feel for you.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask, like, what was your favorite song on that album in particular? I did see you guys at the reality tour, the Heathen tour also, but Outside is like, that's my favorite.
Wow.
So yeah, I would love to ask, like, what song is your favorite from the Outside album?
I actually like Strangers When We Meet, which actually was not too avant-garde. That was one of the only songs. But on the crazy stuff, I mean, Small Plot of Land was nuts. It was like Aladdin Sane on steroids. and it was just drums. Sterling Campbell, fantastic drummer. He's up with Cyndi Lauper now. I'm going to go see him in a few weeks. He played with Duran Duran before Bowie. He's just a solid drummer. David likes drummers that just lay the beat down, you know. So, what was the rest of the question?
I said I love your part on
Oh, Small Plot of Land.
Yeah, but do you have a favorite song?
Well, Small Plot of Land was just drums and piano, and then another gentleman named Erdl played some synthesizers and keyboards like string sounds to support. And Sterling just started playing this beat. That's what I was getting at. And I just improvised, and David started talking. In the studio, we did the Outside album in, where was it? It was in Switzerland, where Queen recorded. I forgot the city, where they have the jazz festival every year. What? Montreux? Huh? Which one? Montreux. Oh, you said it with a French accent. Oui. Come and talez-vous. That's all I know. That's about all I know, and I know the national anthem of... That's about it. So yeah, it was at that studio, and they had a beautiful 9-foot Steinway there. And David actually said to me a year earlier, he said, I think I lost my way a little bit in the 80s. I don't know how true that is, because there are some great things that came out of the 80s, you know, Loving the Alien, and there are some good songs. But he felt after Let's Dance, he had pressure from the record companies to do more hits of that nature so they could sell more records. And so years go on, and that decade is gone, and he's not feeling right, because he was a man of integrity. So he said to me in the studio one day, I need to get back to myself. So I'm gathering all the musicians over the last 20 years who were the biggest influence on me. So it was Brian Eno, and it was Reeves Gabrels, Carlos Alomar, Sterling, and myself. And it was very flattered to know that he felt we could revitalize him and wake him up, and it did. We'd be in the studio for, I remember, 4 hours a day for 2 weeks with two 24-track Sony tape recorders, so that was 48 tracks. Now with Pro Tools, you could do hundreds and hundreds, but then it was a big deal, and these are big machines with tape, and they were connected to each other, and we just would play and improvise out of nowhere. I mean, sometimes he would play Marvin Gaye in our headphones and have us play to that music and then remove that, and God knows what came out. And he would be sitting, sometimes standing. He had an easel, and he was painting Well, actually, he was working with charcoals. Everybody in the band over the 2 weeks, he did our faces. I have one of the faces of my faces hanging in my house. And we lost our home in the fire 7 years ago, and that was the only thing, plus a few other things that we took out of the house. So I'm glad I still have that charcoal of him. But he was that creative. And every once in a while, he'd go up to the microphone and say something or sing something, and that's the Outside album. But after we left, him and Brian, they created those songs. And of course, there's a lot of bootlegs out there. And unfortunately, someone stole the tapes. The Outside album was supposed to be a trilogy. And when the tapes were stolen and released, he lost the desire to do the album 2 and 3. A few months before he passed, he actually wrote me saying he was wanting to get back and do them. So maybe they're happening on some other dimension or zone that I'm not exactly in tune with, but I could feel it at times. So does that answer that? Okay. Laura?
Come on up. I want to say, I told her this earlier, that you are on a majority of the songs of my life soundtrack.
No.
And, you know, I just want to thank you in front of everyone for what you've given for sharing your talent with all of us, you know. I mean, Aladdin Sane, the piano in that, the piano in Sweet Thing, the piano in Dodo, and just to name a few. Mick Ronson, Play Don't Worry, Slaughter on 10th Avenue. All those things are part of my DNA, and you know what? All those songs, all that stuff you participated in, definitely, it's bigger than life as far as I'm concerned, and I just want to thank you, thank you, thank you so much. And what I want to ask you, you've seen all the transformations, you know, with Bowie, you know, you were involved in most of them, and you've recorded at a lot of places. I wanted to ask you, what studio sticks out? Because I know you recorded at Sigma and you also recorded at Trident. And do you prefer the old school way of recording as far as analog as opposed to digital? And once again, before I sit down, thank you, and excuse my language. Dude, it doesn't get any fucking better than you, and thank you so much.
You're more than welcome. That cost me 500 fucking bucks. There's studios that I loved were Trident, Sigma, and Montreux, the one we were talking about. That's where Queen also recorded.
Right.
Trident had the best piano, and that's where Paul McCartney, they did it, Hey Jude. So the note, that was in 1973 in January. I was 50 then, which makes me 112 now. Oh, by the way, I celebrated my 80th birthday last week. Everyone else I know is dead, and I'm seeing what I could do to stick around. You know, I feel more energized than when I was 20 because the music is the music, and that keeps us alive. And it's about the only sane thing left on the planet, I heard. So those were the great studios. The Trident won the notes. I was taught when I grew up to find the notes. But in that studio, the notes find you. They're just in the walls, you know. So that piano was there for many years until it was just played to death, and that was all. Next.
We'll get to everybody.
As long as
All
we're
right,
not
thank
going anywhere, we'll be here all night. Paul might get pissed off, but we'll see.
Thank you for being here. Another outside question. I'm working on a chapter for an upcoming academic book on Bowie.
Oh, wow.
And I'm looking at the art of outside. So I'm actually going to interview David DeAngelis, who worked with David to create the cover and the inside artwork. And so, my question's about the influences you mentioned. And I had watched a video where you had talked about this, where you're listening to different, like you said Marvin Gaye right now. Were there other things you were listening to as influence for your playing on outside? And then reaching further back, other influences like Monk, and you mentioned playing, or they mentioned Elvin Jones. So just curious if you could talk about influences on your playing.
It's a great question. My life is one big influence. It's like anything I hear, I'm always learning. And it's kind of like a walking sponge. Sounds like a sci-fi movie or something, but it's like whatever I hear goes in. Some I discard, some I put a lot of focus on, and some in the middle. And consequently, it gave me a broad viewpoint of music, because I liked Bach, Mozart, Beethoven, Chopin, Franz Liszt, Stravinsky, Bartók, Ligeti, just on and on. And I also loved in the jazz world Art Tatum, Oscar Peterson, Bud Powell, Thelonious Monk, and Bill Evans, and it just goes on and on. I went to see a friend of mine the other night, one of the greatest jazz pianists of our generation, Brad Maldu, and I saw him the other night. Last night I went to see the opening at the Blue Note in L.A., Robert Glasper. He's frightening, you know. So they're all somewhere in my head, which is why I'm kind of crazy. But when I play, nothing is there. That's the secret. Making something from nothing. But that doesn't mean you don't do your homework. I spent thousands and thousands of hours doing scales, listening to recordings, doing transcriptions. You know, as a musician, first you want to imitate, but at a certain point you want to stop that, and then you want to sort of absorb it and become it, and then you want to innovate. But imitation helps put you in the field so you know what your peers are doing. So in my case, it was very, very vast. But when I sit down and play, that's not in my head, unless I'm doing a tribute. Sometimes I'll do a tribute to Monk or Bill Evans, and I'm thinking of the songs I saw them play live. So, yes. But other than that, if you think too much when you're performing, it gets in the way of the aesthetic. So that's as much as I know about that. Next.
You're up. Come on up.
Hi, I'm Mark, and I go to my friend's house every once in a while, and we play games. And one of the few songs around Christmas time are the Little Drummer Boy Peace on Earth song.
Which one?
The Little Drummer Boy in Peace on Earth.
Oh.
What would?
When he did that with Bing Crosby, you mean?
Yeah. But, what? Do you know what kind of inspired him to do that? And also, what advice would you have for aspiring singers?
Well, I'm not sure what caused that connection because we never discussed it, but I think his management probably thought, what a great thing to connect a new generation with Bing Crosby, who was, prior to Frank Sinatra, the biggest name at the time, and both having great voices, and David being very flexible. He was a very warm person, and he probably picked a song that he knew Bing would know and like. And look, David, talk about chameleon. We'd be on stage and in a sound check, and all of a sudden he's singing like Johnny Cash or Elvis Presley, just to amuse us. So he could become those things. So that's that. Advice to singers: I have the worst voice in the world and I cannot sing, so I just love singers, but you can't vocalize for 8 hours a day like I did on the piano. You ruin your vocal cords, but you certainly, number one, have to love it. The passion comes first. Then it's nice to know some techniques, but I have played prior to Bowie and since probably over 800 or 900 singers. David was my favorite, but many, many singers, and they all have different methods. The thing with David is he actually never vocalized. When I was out with Smashing Pumpkins, they're standing on their head and they're singing and doing all that stuff, Not David, he just walk on the stage. We'd be in a recording session on the Earthling album, working all day. He's not there. He comes in 3 in the afternoon. He said, let's do that song. Puts the mic on, sings one take and leaves. Yeah. So passion first, and you do your homework, and ultimately try to have your own voice where you're not imitating somebody else, that you're able to express how you feel, and in the most honest way.
Okay.
Does that help?
Yes, it does.
Good.
Thank you.
Thanks, man.
Hang on.
Sorry. I brought this because this is on repeat for me all the time right now, and
Oh my God.
I want to know if you could play The Motel. I love that song so much.
That's a great song.
Yeah, it's gonna make me cry if you play it.
Then he won't play it. Never mind.
Please, please.
You gonna put it up on eBay or?
No.
The Motel is actually one of my favorite songs. I forgot about it. I don't really know it, but it the last time I played it was in, 2001 or something, but it had this kind of and then he sings.
You made her cry, Mike.
It was those exact notes that I played.
Can you do that one more time?
One more time. It'll be different every time.
Mike, I have a question for you. As someone who has given so many lessons in your career, you've also had lessons, obviously. You started off as a student. Can you tell us about some of your worst lessons or teachers and best? Like, how does someone who has come so far and is now this master teacher, how were you affected by teachers?
It's a great question. The best teachers are the best students, that I have found that. And I'm still a student. I only teach when I teach during the week, so it might be a few students, the rest of the time I'm composing. So when I'm in teacher mode or in a master class like this, I'm teaching. But 90% of my life, I'm in student mode, learning, hearing, absorbing. What can I write next? What can I learn from Billie Eilish? What can I learn from Robert Glasper, from Brad Maldon, from Jelly Roll Morton from 1920, from Louis Armstrong, from Miles Davis? It's never ending. It's a curiosity and almost an obsession, but not quite. It's healthy because we sit on the shoulders of everyone who came before us. I can't picture what music would sound like from any artist, instrumentally or vocally, if they had never heard any music. Who knows what they might be doing? So when I play what I just played there, Franz Liszt is floating around, Spanish music is floating around, flamenco music, And if I hadn't heard those things, who knows what would come out. So that's the first thing. The second thing is nobody's the student all the time and nobody's the teacher all the time. That's where the arrogance comes in with certain teachers. Whoever knows more at that minute is the teacher. And a lot of times, those little kids know more than the teachers. So it requires some humility. Took a minute to figure that one out. The next thing is the good and bad and the ugly of my teachers, right? That's really what you want to know. The gossip of the teachers who destroyed my life, but your enemies become your greatest lovers because they pissed you off so much that you just had to keep fighting, right? Never happened to me. Okay, so one teacher who was a Juilliard teacher, but I didn't have to go to Juilliard. I was living in Brooklyn, and he lived in the next apartment building. He was a great, great classical pianist, and my mom sent me to study with him. And improvising was not in his universe. He was straight Brahms and Mozart and Beethoven, and very good at it. He didn't make it to the level of Vladimir Horowitz or Arthur Rubinstein or Richter or those kind of people at the time. He might have been the second or third layer, but he was fantastic. But his mom actually rented out Carnegie Hall with all her money. That's what she did, so she could paper the place and he could play there. But nothing much happened after that. So he was a little bitter. So if a teacher is frustrated, they're going to run their frustrations on the student, right? So he was teaching me Mozart, K331 in A major. Now, I don't remember what I had for breakfast, but I do remember that from 68 years ago. And it goes like this. Something like that. So I loved the piece, and you could hear the genius of Mozart. Speaking of crying, it can make you cry. But I was a rambunctious 12 or 13 years old, and I came back the next week, and I said, oh. Etc. I didn't play it as well as him because I was 12, but it was that vibe. And his remark was, there are two things he could have said. One, which I would have loved, you're an aspiring composer and improviser. Or number two, he chose door number two. you have delusions of grandeur. And I thought, maybe I do. But fuck you, this is my last lesson with you. And I swear I never saw him after that. Skip 6 more years, I was studying with a blind pianist named Lenny Tristano. This guy was really good. I would have to take the train, a bus, and walk 2 hours each way from Brooklyn to get to Queens. I had to go through New York City and walk in Jamaica on the streets. And so it would be 4 hours of traveling. The lesson was 10 minutes. And it was very expensive at the time. And like $8 or $9 in 1962 for 10 minutes. And he taught 80 students on a Sunday and Monday so he could practice all week and rehearse his band. And of course, he's an unsung hero. He was very bitter, but he was a fantastic pianist. But he was very strict in my way, or whatever that expression is. It was just his way, period. And after 2 or 3 years, I fell in love with Thelonious Monk. And I was starting to learn his music from another teacher simultaneously. So Monk was a great improviser, and he discovered a scale that wasn't sort of the major scale or the minor scale. It was used, I think, a little by Debussy and Ravel. It's called a whole tone scale, and it sounds like this. So. So that's the scale. It's a 6-note scale, no half steps. Sing that. It's weird. It's weird. But it's used properly, it's fine. So I threw it in a lesson with Lenny Tristano, and he stopped me in the middle of the piece. He said, these were his exact words, using those fucking Monk whole tone scales when I spent 3 years working with you on diatonic scales, which would be the majors and the minors, and developing this beautiful linear way you could play, and you're playing that bullshit. And that was the last lesson with him. I wonder if some people have had a last lesson with me too. Because there were people who came and I never saw them again. We always think we're the only ones being bullied, and we have to sometimes take a look inside to see if there's any bullying going on. Next question. Don't be shy. Come on up. Hi there.
Hello.
How are you, honey?
So I read your book, and one of the stories that stood out for me that was way before you got together with David Bowie was when you went to, I believe it was the Army, or I can't remember. But anyway, so
I served your country.
Yeah.
I
Thank
played
you.
the glockenspiel and kept a lot of bullets off my face and others by marching down Fifth Avenue playing the glockenspiel. But yes, I was in the Army.
Well, I just loved that story because it was something about you and your life and how you became who you are. And I just imagine you being in this room with all these other people playing the piano in the, I don't know what you call it, with all your fellow Army men, yes. And I kind of want to know, like, what did you play? Like, what were you doing? Like,
It's a great question, actually. I don't think I talked about what I played in the book, right? I never read the book, but I heard it was okay, you know. So I didn't talk about it, right? At the time, it was around 1965. So Ramsey Lewis, who was a jazz pianist, was doing the in crowd. I don't know, maybe some of the folks here who might have been around then. that saved me in my basic training because I was not very good in that world. Throwing hand grenades, crawling on your stomach, bullets shooting above you. On the final test, you had to run a mile. And I was a wise guy, and I went and got a hamburger right before that test. And on the second quarter around, I'm only halfway there, my stomach was killing me. That's in the book. And I didn't know how I would ever pass. And I did some sneaky thing where I passed the judge and went back and came in this way. But the fellows who were in, this is basic training before I got in the band. Everyone has to pay those 8 weeks of dues to this day, you know. And I just was not adept at some of these skills, and you'd have to clean the rifle and shine it up, and getting up at 5 in the morning and you're running a mile, and I just wasn't trained that way. I was a pianist, you know, and it was shocking. And there were a few nice guys that helped me. But once we went into a canteen and there was a little upright piano, and I played a little of that piece, and they figured, okay, he gets a free pass. So I was very happy. But there's a sad part of that story because I grew up in Brooklyn in a home that most homes had a piano, and it was a Jewish family. And when I got to basic training, I was the only Jewish fellow in this group. And guess what? The sergeant was a German. And guess what? He hated me. And guess what? When we had to learn to use a bayonet, which is I think, what is it, a knife attached to a rifle or something? Still trying to figure it out. But there were these dummies, and you had to take the bayonet and stab the dummies. And these guys were going wild, and heads were flying, you know, and you see all the fluff of the head coming off. And I'd go over to the dummy and touch it like that, because I just couldn't conceive of killing somebody, you know. And this sergeant stopped and said, if you're an example of the Jews, he said, I understand why Hitler did what he did. That was so nice.
So you stabbed him with the bayonet?
The thought crossed my mind. Thank you. So you don't realize how these things can affect you. I mean, you know, these days there might be a lawsuit or something like that. The thought didn't even cross my mind. It just was some prejudice and racism and whoever taught him incorrectly, you know. So I haven't had those problems because music is a universal language to me, so it's never about any religion or political group. My sole desire is just to play music and make people happy and enjoy the process for myself. It's both giving and it's selfish and unselfish simultaneously. Next.
Hi, Mike.
Hi.
Aside from the piano in your home, I was just wondering, did you have musicians in your immediate family? And I'm curious about how you connected with music in your childhood. I'm kind of assuming it started pretty young, but I don't know.
I didn't start as young as some pianists who started at 2, 3, 4, 5 years old, but I started at 7, and I loved it. My mother played classical, my sister played classical, but my dad played by ear. But he didn't know anything, but he actually wrote a song he called Cowboys and Indians, because he would see those silent films in the 20s, and nobody was talking, but the music was playing. And somehow he figured out a melody in the left hand and the chords in the right, because melodies are normally in the right hand. And I don't remember the whole piece, but I remember some of it. Right? It's that. And then it went faster. And I had a section. And I always thought about how did he figure that out? Knew nothing about music. And I studied straight classical, so I had teachers and I learned the normal things a pianist learns. But this was new to me. And skip ahead till, I think 3 or 4 years ago, there was an 8-part series on HBO that Trent Reznor did the score. Watchmen. It was a movie in around, I don't know, 2013 or something, but it was this 8-part series. They never picked it up, but you can see it on HBO. It's a fantastic series, and the first one starts with some terrible racism where a whole black community in around 1918 or 20, there's even 21, there's that holiday connected with all these black people killed in some town. And it's like kind of a Western vibe. And Trent called me and said, can you give me a theme for this setting of 1920? And I used this, and then we started distorting it and taking it avant-garde. And the woman who's playing the piano, a black lady, she gets shot at the end, the thing is blowing up, and the piece is going wild. And it became like Aladdin saying, and so you never know when you're going to find a piece and use it, 60 years later. But everyone did play in the family, so it was peer pressure in a way. And we had a little telephone in the closet at the time, and I was kind of lazy and I didn't practice a lot. So anytime I didn't practice, my mom would go into the little closet making believe she's calling the teacher to cancel the lesson. And then I'd go back and practice again.
Didn't you have a piano in the bathroom? What's that story?
When I was 14, 1959, my sister bought me a Wurlitzer piano. It's the same thing, you hear it on. You know that song, Light My Fire, or something like that from back then, The Doors? That was a Wurlitzer. My sister bought me the first one when they were first developed in 1959, and I had a piano in the living room. But I always was starting to get serious about the music, so I set it up in the bathroom, so I never lost any time. Been thinking of doing it again now that my wife is renovating the house. I don't think she'd like that too much.
Hi, Mike. I've always thought of the piano as like an orchestra in a box. As a school kid, I played the clarinet, and we've got one note at a time, but you can do a lot more than one at a time. So I'm wondering if you could give us a demo of why the piano is the king or the queen of all the instruments, or door number 2, what instrument do you secretly wish that you would actually spend your life perfecting?
It is piano, but there is a senior to the piano, which is those $2 million church organs that I would see when I traveled in Europe, and I would ask if I could, on a day off on a Bowie tour, if I could play those instruments. And you play one note, and you swear you're in heaven, But it's not very practical to tour with one. So I had a little Farfisa organ or a little Hammond organ, but it really is the piano. So that's the part 2 of your question. Part 1 is it is an orchestra in front of you, and I orchestrate on the piano. So if you have a melody, let's get a diatonic melody in the key of C. Give me a few notes. Give me 3 notes. C, D, F? Okay. So that's the melody. And that's actually the rhythm. It's mixed in with the note. Bum, bum, bum. So now what's missing is a support system for that melody, which the clarinet could play that. The clarinet could do this. Right? The clarinet's good with single notes, but so if that was printed out and you give the violins a part and the trombones and the bass and the cellos and clarinets and the French horns, that could be orchestrated. But that was my orchestration on the piano. So using the 3 elements that make up music, at least on a physical level, which is melody, rhythm, and harmony, which are chords that support the melody. That's it. That's all I know. Party's over. Next question.
Hi.
Hi.
So I find that a lot of musicians, composers, pianists have a particular sonority or like a chord voicing of a chord that they keep coming back to in their playing, in their music. So I was wondering if you have one and what it means to you and maybe why you just can't get it out of your musical lexicon.
Oh, I know people do have that. I try to keep the door open and I'm always looking for new voicings. But you can't get away from triads because that's sort of the baseline of music, you know. That's a C chord, G, C, F, F, C, G. So those chords, and then all of a sudden, 300 years later, you get. C chord and an F chord, you know, and, you know, throw in an occasional A minor or D minor, and you have about 1 million songs that you could write. So less is more that way, and the simplicity of the chords, that will always show up in my playing. As avant-garde as I can get and as jazzy as I can get, I'll always resort to some very simple triads and sevenths, and it's how you voice them. It's not just the chord, it's what chord come before it and what chord comes after it, and how they connect. Does that help?
Yeah.
Good. Question?
What do you think about the younger generation musicians?
There's some amazing musicians coming up, you know, with YouTube, and you could see everything. I mean, I would have to run to the record store and the library and find scores. Everything is at your fingertips. So I hear 5 and 7 and 10 and 12-year-olds on every instrument, and those were things I didn't get till I was 15 or 20. So the opportunities are incredible. And jazz has really spread certainly to all around the world, so you hear some fantastic students from so many countries. People send me recordings all the time, and they're from every which place, you know, and it wasn't that way when I grew up. I mean, jazz is an American art form, but over in Europe and in Asia, they appreciate it more. Question? Yeah.
This is a funny thing. We've actually shared the same air together for a couple of times. First time in 1995 on the Outside tour. I was in the front row cheering for you, so thank you for that. And the last time was actually, we were on the same stage at the Palladium in Hollywood with 9 Inch Nails. I worked with Trent for 7 years in the studio as a playback guy, engineer guy, whatever, you know, programming. So it's funny hearing about the Outside record. It's funny being here. My question for you, with Trent, when we recorded, it was push the record button and just play and kind of stream of consciousness, see what happens, make sense of it after. Do you, when you write, push record and do that? Do you work a part? Do you work something into something as you're going and then lay it down? And my second question is, did Trent ever play for you piano? Because obviously tremendous piano player, and I was just curious if he ever sat down and played for you.
He did. He was fascinated with my piano playing because he plays very simple, but his playing is very potent, and it really cuts through. He just was kind of amazed that that's all I did, and my whole life was dedicated to the piano, whereas he could play the saxophone, he could play cello, obviously write great and sing great, and I mean, he's a genius. But he, at one of the concerts at the Wilton, he shocked me because I hardly knew him, but we were on stage together with Bowie, obviously, and we played at the Forum when we were in the States. And when he introduced me to sit in on one of these shows, you know how these bands retire all the time and then they come out and play again, and then they retire and they come back from the dead, a resurrection. This was one of those shows where it was the last 9 Inch Nails show. And do you remember the year, Mark, when it was? Around, yeah. So he was introducing me, and he actually said I was his biggest inspiration. And I could hardly play after that, you know, because there was not much to say, because he took the life out of what I would have played musically to inspire, and somebody was saying that to you who I respected, and trying to wonder, has he even heard me play, you know, because I only use a portion of my talent when I was playing with Bowie, because it was a particular window. It was wide, but there's many other things I did. But intuitively, he felt and heard something. And so that's that. And when I was in New Orleans recording the Fragile album with him, were you there?
I wasn't on that one.
Okay.
Presentation works, though. I know that was a different process, but...
Yeah. So when I was there, I actually counted 60 keyboards that he had, and he brought in 3 pianos for me. Pick the one you want, you know. So I recorded 12 songs, maybe 15, and he only used 3. And I saw him in London. I was playing with Bowie one night, and he was playing the next night with 9 Inch Nails. I went to the show. I said, Trent, how come you didn't put those 12 songs on? You told me you loved what I played, you know. He said, to be honest with you, your influence was so strong that it was taken away from my voice because it was so connected with what he knew of David Bowie. So he chose 3 songs. Becoming was one of them. I forget the other ones. And I said, I really respect your integrity for doing that. But I also said, go fuck yourself.
There's a theme here going.
And he had a smile, you know. someday they'll get released, you know. You have another question, Mark?
I got plenty of questions. Anyone else have questions? Come on.
Hi, Mike. Two questions. Yeah. One is for Outside and Earthling, the album that you made with Bowie, where the art director was my friend Davide De Angelis. Davide, he created the connection with Bowie when Davide was kid, and Bowie went to eat in the restaurant of the father of Davide in London. And when he started work with Bowie, he said that there was like light and darkness, because David have a very interesting energy. And my friend Phil Palmer, that record China Girl with him and Iggy Pop, he said it was the most charismatic person that he ever met in his life. I want to know if you think it's real. And also the second question is, because you're the musician that work more with David, what you think was your alchemy, which is the element that you bring to his music?
The second, Mark, can you break that down for me, those two questions?
Yeah. What was I missed what you said in your first question about what they said about him.
That Davide De Angelis was his art director. He said that Bowie have a very interesting energy, and work together was like light and darkness.
Oh, okay. So David's energy, the yin and the yang, and
between them.
Good observation, right? We all are, to some degree, have both of those. That, you know, Carl Jung, the psychologist, talked about the shadow side, you know. I'm sure his observation was correct. I always saw the smiling David, because he was always calling me when he knew he wanted me to play the piano. So that brought him joy, and it brought me joy to accompany him, you know. My fingers always found the right notes with him. With certain singers, I tighten up, and I never knew why, but he was very giving. So there is that fluidity, okay? So that's the second?
The second, because you are the musician that work more with Bowie,
yeah,
which is the alchemy between you and him, and which you think is the element that you bring to his music?
I superficially say that I'm the whipped cream on the cake. But it goes deeper. I think David was more than a rock musician. And I think that's the key. I wrote a piece, a homage to a classical composer named Mussorgsky. Mussorgsky wrote Pictures of an Exhibition. Keith Emerson did a crazy version of it. But I did some wild variations on Pictures of an Exhibition, and in around 2001, I sent it to David. Within 5 minutes, email was starting to happen then, and within 5 minutes, he sends me a picture of Mussorgsky, and he went off, knew more about the guy than I did. So he was so well-rounded. So he wasn't just a rock musician. And what brought us together is we were discussing Charlie Mingus and Stan Kenton. Stan Kenton had a big band, and in the 40s and the 50s, and he loved him. He came from London to see Stan Kenton play, and he loved Charlie Mingus, who, you know, a few months before I joined him, I had seen in a club in Manhattan called the Five Spot. So we had a lot of love for things that were outside of the rock world. So I think he felt if I could add my classical elements, jazz elements, and avant-garde elements to his music, it maybe elevates it. Because the Spiders was just like a great rock band, like Mick Jagger and the guys, the Rolling Stones, you know. So if there's this healthy competition going on at the time, which it was, if I put some crazy stuff on it and it works, it puts him in another league. So it was I didn't know these things at the time. History has proven that to be the case, you know.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Clara. You've talked a lot about like your composing music, but I just wanted to know if you had any tips about like composing music for a single instrument,
Like what instrument?
like a cello.
Ooh. You like the cello?
Yes.
So how you sort of want to know how you might compose just for the cello without other instruments supporting the cello, just like a cello piece?
Yeah, just like a way to compose music for like just the cello that sounds good.
Yeah, I wish I had my synthesizers with a cello sound. I could show you, but I'll make believe the cello's down here, and I'll show you, okay? So it's a lower instrument, right? It's not as low as the bass, but it's higher than the viola and the violin, right? So maybe it's around here. So if I chose a key like D minor, that's a nice dark key, and it has a scale that goes with it. So if I use notes from that scale and no other notes, and I just play a single line in my left hand, making believe I'm the cello, you might, and you picture the cello rips your heart out. It's so beautiful, and you picture a melody like this. And those notes came from this scale. So that could be a little solo cello piece. It would also be nice if the string quartet with two violins and a viola maybe played. Because it adds some gravitas or gravity to the melody. But you could play it alone. There's some great Bach solo cello pieces. They're phenomenal.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So, Mike, the theme I feel from this evening is go fuck yourself. I say that hesitating to ask you if you might play us a song, maybe with, I don't know, a guest artist somewhere in the house?
You can do that.
Oh, good. I thought you were going to tell me to go fuck myself.
I'll save that for later. Cherilyn and I met at the Canyon Club about a year or so ago, maybe more, and one of her students was singing in a band called Summit with my grandson Max, who's a drummer, and Cash is a very good songwriter and singer, and they asked if I could play on one of their songs on their first album, a beautiful song that Cash wrote called Blue. And so Cherilyn asked Cash if he wouldn't mind doing a song tonight with me, and I'll accompany him on his music. Please welcome Cash. So the thing I like about sitting in with Cash and the band is they let me play long introductions. And speaking of simple chords, it's very basic in the chords, but the way they twist and they move around. It's fascinating, and you could tell Cash has done his homework on songwriting. I don't know your exact process when they will talk about it, but you could see that there's a lot of thought that went into it, even if it's a G chord here and then a D here and an A here. How's that happen? Good answer. And that's what I would say if I wrote it.
Yeah, my master class is coming soon. Yeah, with this song, I mean, with most songs that I write, it usually I'll just be playing chords on the guitar, different voicings that I know, and then like a melody will come to me. So, I mean, the song starts with just this rhythm. It's just, and then to that I'll be just singing a melody, and then I just kind of hear what comes next, and then when I hear the melody that comes next, I just accompany that with the chord that fits. Yeah, I don't know.
That's letting the music and the notes find you, right?
For sure.
And it's interesting because we were talking about chords and chord progression. It's a G chord, and it goes to a D chord. And the D chord is the fifth note of the G scale. And then it goes to a chord, which is the second chord in the scale, and then back to a G. And once in a while, there's maybe a B minor chord or a B flat diminished, but everything else is just those three chords. But they work, and that's the beauty of music. It doesn't have to always be complex, does it? Okay, we're gonna play Blue for you. But before we play Blue, I'll play the Blue Prelude.
Yeah.
The creatures in disguise. Oh, I'm in fear of all the rumors of my demise. And I'm free of all commotion. I'm lost inside life's motion. When did everything get so blue? The world I know is a world untrue. Untrue. In the world I know we're not see through. And now that I am old, I never feel the way I did before. And now that they're all gone, I Oh, I am scared of all the creatures in disguise. Oh, I'm in fear of all the rumors of my demise. And now I'm free of all commotion. I'm lost inside life's motion. When did everything get so blue? And I've been hearing all the voices in the sky, and I've been seeing all the violence in their eyes. And I'm free of all commotion. I'm lost inside life's emotion. When did everything get so blue? Blue. God knows I have to fight and be true. I'm blue, yeah, now. Oh, it's true. I'm blue. God knows I have to fight and be true. I'm blue, yeah, now. Oh, I am scared of all the creatures in the skies. Oh, I'm in fear of all the rumors of my demise. And I'm free of all commotion. I'm lost inside life's motion. When did everything get so blue? And I've been hearing all the voices in the sky, and I've been seeing all the violence in their eyes. Now I'm free of all commotion. I'm lost inside life's motion. When did everything get so blue?
That was fun. it's nice to watch this song evolve and hear your voice get better through the year and your confidence on the guitar player. It's great. Do we have any other questions?
You mentioned before about how people in Europe and Asia perhaps are more enthusiastic about jazz here than here now. And I certainly know that I was shocked to learn that at the Grammys now the rock and roll category is not on stage anymore. I haven't watched it in years, but I heard that that's, so maybe rock and roll is dead in America now. And I guess, you've traveled the world for decades playing music, and I guess I just wondered what your impression is around the world and what those trends are, and whether we can sort of get that love for music back in America somehow, or what your impressions are of the love of music in America.
I think we lost our way, right?
I mean, to me,
I think we lost our way. When I grew up, 2% of the income coming in was classical, maybe 2 or 3% was jazz. The rest was rock and roll. Now rock and roll's dropped, and it's hip hop, isn't it? Which is fine because there's a lot of great stuff, I like that lyric, A minor from Kendrick. That's another story for another time. But
that's our show.
But these things go in cycles. I know in classical music there was some lulls in the 1890s, then things popped up, and you had Gershwin in the 20s, and Stravinsky and Rachmaninoff. So they go through cycles. Hopefully it'll come back, but what happened, I think, is people got more excited about being famous and looking a certain way and making a certain amount of money and having a certain amount of followers became a priority. There's nothing wrong with those things in its right proportion, but it became a priority. And certainly when I grew up in the 60s, we weren't thinking about becoming rich. It was what kind of music. So ultimately it has to come back. But right now it's a dull period that way. But you have a lot of talent. I mean, out there, I do love Billie Eilish, and Sabrina Carpenter's talented, and there's some great rap stuff. I don't like all the vulgar stuff for sure, but I love the beats, some great beats. And that music did come from some form of integrity, from rough times. So we'll see what happens. I don't know. For me, nothing has changed. I just keep playing. One of the traps is to get involved in things that you can't control. So just do what you love, and hopefully things work out better.
Thank you, Mike, first of all. Quick question.
Yeah.
In your training years, did you ever have a challenge come your way and it was like, do I want to keep doing this, or do I want to quit? Or was there a moment when you really had to figure it out and dig in, and how did you solve that in your life? Or did that never happen to you?
Never happened, actually. I never had writer's block, and whenever I heard something,
Yeah.
it would come out.
Even as a child, was there ever any, what did you do to I know it takes hard work, so what did you do as a child to discipline yourself to do this?
I only did the first few years 20 minutes a day, and then I moved it up to an hour, and then 2 hours. And interestingly enough, when I was in the Army band, there was nothing else to do but play a parade every few months. So I practiced 8 hours a day, and you got ranked like a high-level sergeant or the equivalent in the Army. It was called special something or other. And I used to play for the generals, and I would practice for 8 hours and then go do a jazz gig at night, because I was stationed, I told everybody, overseas, because I lived in Brooklyn, but I was stationed in Staten Island, just over the fucking Verrazano Bridge. But I got some sympathy, and we all need a little sympathy. So, the music, first of all, I didn't buy into the drugs and the alcohol. It just didn't make sense to me, because you have to value your body. It's your temple. You know what I mean? It's very important to keep it healthy, and I saw too many of my friends die, overdose, and if they didn't overdose, they had 25 rehabs. So it wasn't like, oh, I'm so smart. This guy drops dead there, and this one shoots himself in the head, and this one's getting high on this, and they're not there the next week. And I thought, I don't think I'll go there. So I never used any drugs, and I'm here to tell the story. And musicians thought you had to be messed up and screwed up and write music only when you're depressed. And you could write when you're happy. You can write when you're sad and depressed, but nothing should stop you from creating music when you feel like creating music. And there were times I composed just for the exercise, and would just compose 5-10 things a day, go in the studio 7 in the morning and come out 3 a.m. I did that in the early 2000s and late 90s for years. But now I only compose when I hear something in my head. So I'm not composing as much. In those days, I'd get one great piece out of 10. And that was fine, because I wrote thousands, so if I got a few hundred, I was happy. Now I will write when I feel it, and usually it'll be good. It might be simple, it might be complex, it might be jazz, it might be new age, it might be pop. I don't know, because I don't see any boundaries with music. I just see music. Duke Ellington said it. There's only good music and bad music, and that's all there is. You know, Miles Davis knew it. You know, Bowie knew it. So, does that help?
Yes. What advice would you give to parents who are trying to help their children along with their growth and development in the arts?
Send them on their way.
Did your kids take piano lessons? Did you force them to take
I have 2 daughters. One is here tonight, Heather. That's who I kissed when I came on. Wasn't a younger bride that I have. My wife is home. They both played. Heather played a little cello, and my other daughter, Jennifer, played some piano. But I think I was hogging the instrument. There was no space or time for them to do it, you know. But they're both very musical and very supportive. You know, not everybody wants to live that life. It's very lonely, you know. You're in your own space, and you're creating, and you're looking for the music, and a lot of exercise, a lot of drilling, and a lot of repetition. Not everybody wants to play that game, and not everybody needs to play that game. You only need a few Bob Dylans and Mozarts and Chopins, you know. I don't know if I was finishing answering that last question for you. The parents. What are you exactly asking, Cherilyn?
As a teacher, I have so many wonderful parents, and they're very supportive. And I think, you know, when a student has a challenge and it's maybe a difficult thing, how can the parents and the teacher and the student work together to overcome those things and move onward and upward. I mean, there are challenges along the way in learning, especially with singing when you're the instrument, right? And your instrument is unique, and the learning process is so different. How can the parents be supportive in helping their children in that learning process?
I mean, if your child sings or plays an instrument, the chances are they've been supported to even get to that place, right? So there's a lot of credit to be given. There's a lot of challenges. I know when I taught a lot of classical music to some of the Asian children back 20, 30 years ago, the parents would sit with them for 10 hours. And I'm not sure the kids wanted to be there all that time. And then there's the other parents, don't practice, just go out and have a good time, be a kid. It's whatever feels right. You have to be both a helicopter mom, and you also have to be flying 5,000 miles above.
It's such a busy world compared to when we were growing up.
It is. It is.
Very complex and busy.
Yeah. There's no easy solution except the compassion that you have to want to support the kids. I wish I knew more to tell you, I know for me it skipped a generation because my grandson Max, we started playing music together when he was 2. And he was playing the drums, and I think he knew not to play the piano because then we couldn't play together. So he picked up the drums. And it's still going on. So, but it's not like I taught him officially. It's the telepathic transmission. It's him seeing how I interact with singers, with bands. I brought him to all the great drummers that I work with, and they would give him pointers and lessons. But he learned better by listening. He didn't like when people talked at him, And so he was born to do that. But he also has a lot of other interests, and I'm glad for that, because these days it's almost impossible to make a living doing music. It's just almost impossible, because the priorities shifted. The money motivation won out temporarily, so it's hard. So, I was talking to the bass player, his name is Quinn, who I'm working with at the Baked Potato, September 13th. The band is all guys that are 60 years younger than me. They're Max's friends. And the bass player said he's studying law. And I thought, he's got his head on right, because he could see the writing on the wall. I barely made it as a musician. And I got lucky with Bowie because I didn't know who he was when he called.
I love this story about when you were asked to go out on stage at the last minute. I don't know if it was something that had happened with the warm-up act or whatever, and you had to just go out there. And what was that like?
That's how I'm going to close the show tonight. I'm going to play the same medley that I played at the Hammersmith Auditorium in 1973 when David Bowie said to the audience, "This is the last show we're ever going to do." And you probably have seen that in the Ziggy Stardust movie. What was missing, because his manager was a fucking asshole, and Bowie eventually realized it and fired him. But I opened that show, and that was never properly recorded. There's some cassettes that float around. But basically, David said to me in the afternoon, he was a little nervous. And he heard me playing some of his songs in rehearsal. I was just playing them like reimaginings of his songs. And he said, oh, why don't you make that the overture and open up the show? And that's what I did. 50 years later, which was 2 years ago, I did it at the same place, the Hammersmith, had a new name, in London. And they did a revised version of the Ziggy movie. And I went on stage and played a Bowie medley, different notes, but some of the same songs from 50 years earlier. Now it's 2 years since then. I'm going to play a Bowie medley of the songs that come to my mind when I'm improvising, because I don't know what I'm going to play yet. And I think that's probably a good thing to close the evening with, right? Unless there's any questions I missed. I want to make sure, because I promised that I would answer every question. Is any question before I play it? So we got the answers to whatever the questions were, because the reason I've always done my master classes with questions and answers, you don't know one's a classical pianist, one's a singer, one's a cellist, one's a grandparent, so everyone has different questions. If it was everybody wanting to know this kind of bebop jazz and the audience was that, well, then I would teach that. But since all my classes, wherever I do them, and I've been in so many universities, you have a mixture of, thought processes. So it's always worked for me, because I trust the same thing that I do when I improvise on the piano is sort of how I live my life. I think life is an improvisation. That's the simplicity of it. And we don't know what's going to happen the next second. So I will play you every Bowie song I know. No, I'll play you some of the ones you'll recognize.
That just happened. I think.
Literally, like 4 inches from us.
I know. I think I really didn't pay attention. I think I did. I just didn't want to be obvious. So I'm. We'll see. I'll check it. Pray it turned out. If anything, it was the sound. Oh my God.
Yeah, I noticed that too. I'm like, yeah, it made me feel like I was like, wow, yeah, me too. Yeah. Like, am I gonna pass out?
Oh wow.
Yeah.
It's kind of a cool, like, I'm not really supposed to do, but I know exactly. That's cool. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that was beyond. You guys, what?
That was so cool.
That was like on the whole planet. We were here.